Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Chatting Category Romance. This is a channel that I've made with Sarah, the Bookish Knitter, where we talk about category romances, which, if you are the bulk of our audience, you are going to associate with Harlequin romance. For decades and decades, and continuing to the present day, Harlequin romance comes out with a dozen, more than that, category romances every month. In fact, it's much more than that. It's 4 or 5 or 6 Harlequin Presents, 4 or 5 or 6 Harlequin romances, 4 or 5 or 6 Harlequin intrigue, Harlequin historical, Harlequin heartwarming. Lots and lots of choices there, and they're all category in that they're only a certain length. They subscribe to the overarching thematic ideas of their subcategories. So, for instance, Harlequin intrigue will not be historical; it will not take place in the 1920s. That sort of, and vice versa, that sort of thing. If you are a casual observer of the romance genre, that's what you'll think about. But of course, there's another. Right? There's also Mills and Boon in the UK, which is even older than Harlequin, I think. We'd have to ask Sarah for the details there, but I think Mills and Boon is even older, and they also have been pumping out category-style romances forever and ever. And the romance that I'm talking about today started life as a Mills and Boon romance, and then was repackaged for Harlequin. And it's this. It's A Convenient Bridegroom by Helen Bianchen. Now, this is on my Kindle Oasis here, which is where I've been doing all of my reading lately. So aside from, print and paper galley copies that aren't on, if I don't have an e-copy for it, then I've been reading those in physical form and feeling the torments of the damned when I do so. The turning of the pages, the balancing of the book, the moving of the bookmark, all that sort of crap is just the wanting to highlight some portion of a page and not having anything near me, but having a 10-pound little schnauzer sleeping right here on my breastbone, so I can't move. So yes, I can dog-ear the page, but then what about that page? What part of that page did I want? And the ease and the convenience and this all in one place. I've been reading everything on this, but I don't know how I'm not gonna do this in every video. But for today, I thought I would find full color editions of the covers just so that you have something else to look at. And this is from, I think this novel is from the year 2000 or 1999. It was originally a Mills and Boon romance, as far as I know. Set in Sydney, Australia. The Mills and Boon are often set in. They're often set in the colonies. They're often set in London, but they're often set in the colonies as well. And Australia is a big one. Oh my God, that was so popular as a getaway fantasy destination. I imagine it'd be the same as if a Harlequin romance were set in Hawaii or something like that. Where yes, it's part of the UK, but it's so exotic. It's so far away. Could be. I don't know. I spent time living in Hawaii, and when you do, you realize it's not as exotic as it looks. But it doesn't matter anyway. The location almost never does in Harlequin Presents novels. And in this case, we have a very familiar plot line, a very familiar sort of framework for the plot. There's a young woman, Aisha Benini. She is a member of a corporate family, corporate titans, the Beninis, and they are contemplating, the elders of the family are contemplating a merger, so to speak, with the Santangelo family. That merging of their corporate empires would make both of them that much stronger. The impression I got in this book, it's a little bit vague the few times that it comes up. We've seen before on category romances, actually romances just in general, that a lot of times one of the two families in this kind of plot framework is dying financially. They need the match in order to survive. We talked about a novel like that in Chatting Category Romances a few months ago. There was exactly that plot. I didn't get that impression in this book. The Meninis and the Santangelos seem equal. It's not survival, it's pretty much greed. They just want to be more powerful. And they think that the way to do that is a literal merger between two of their people. Carlo Santangelo will marry Aisha Benini. she will become his convenient bridegroom. And boy, oh boy, I don't know when this book was written. Was it written in 1999 for Mills and Boon? Or was it maybe a very much older manuscript that Helen Bianchen just had and slightly reworked for Mills and Boon, and then maybe slightly reworked it again for Harlequin Presents? I don't really know. I don't know the provenance of a lot of these individual Harlequin category romances, and I myself am fascinated by them. I wish I did know. I wish I knew the story behind all of these ladies. I wish I knew the story behind all of their deadlines and the provenance of all of their manuscripts. I think I already know, I fear that provenance and all of those stories are just lost. They're just completely lost. I would like a gigantic history of this industry. I would like several volumes of gigantic oral histories from these ladies and their editors and their commissioners who bought these books. And the executives at Mills and Boon and Harlequin 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I would love those stories. Absolutely love those stories. And it's not like we're talking about a tiny niche interest. More people have read Harlequin romances than have read any other kind of book. Not just in modern times, but ever. You would think that would warrant more in terms of literary history than it ever gets, than as far as I can tell it ever has gone. I think it's just stigma. I think it's just people say, well, I'm contemplating a biography of an author named Helen Bianchen. Oh, really? I don't know that name. Well, who is Helen Bianchen? Well, she wrote Harlequin romances for 20 years. You can just see the change in the agent's face, the publisher's face. Oh, no. She's not a real author. She's sold more books than you have. She sold more books than Jonathan Franzen has, but she's not a real author. I would love those stories. I would absolutely love the stories behind the stories here. I would love to know why, for instance, and this is to get back to this particular book, why A Convenient Bridegroom seems so dated, even from 1999 or 2000 or whatever. I vividly remember the year 2000, and people didn't act like this. The year 2000 was not, the year AD 1000. People didn't act like this then. Even if there were financial need, I don't think that the Benini family is in much financial need. I think they just want this merger to go through. So even if they were in financial need, I don't think that anybody would act this way, the way the characters do in this book. I certainly don't think they'd talk the way the characters do in this book. None of the characters talk like human beings. They talk like movie creatures, like creatures up on a B-roll romance movie. Very sudsy. Very melodramatic and arch. Not to say it wasn't enjoyable. I know that I'm not making it sound enjoyable, but Helen Bianchen's a heck of a writer. This was a really enjoyable story. But it infuriated me at the same time. It's really well done. I never wanted to stop reading, but it infuriated me. I don't know if this was just a much older manuscript, or maybe I'm the one who's at fault. Maybe I'm just blurring how much things have changed since in the last 20 years. In a lot of different ways here. Carlo is a real person. He has all sorts of complex, nuanced thoughts about this merger, both financial and personal. He is a widower, and he deeply loved his dead wife. And he has a mistress, Nina, or at least a strong relationship with her, and she is perfectly happy to talk about that relationship to Aisha. And Carlo has all sorts of nuanced reactions to that, all sorts of complicated angers and resentments and also reassurances. In other words, he's a real character, and Aisha is not at all. She has been in love with him forever. She's been in love with him her whole life, as long as she can remember. He's gorgeous, so is she, but his gorgeousness is, when we see his gorgeousness through her eyes in this novel, it is very different than when we see her gorgeousness through his eyes or somebody else's eyes. Very different. In his, it's personal. In hers, it's somebody examining a Mercedes in a sale lot. I don't know if I'm really making clear what the difference between those two things is, but it's very, very noticeable. Carlo's beauty, we want to use that word, his handsomeness, is the handsomeness of a human being. It's an ancillary factor to his personality. Aisha's beauty is described as the sum and total essence of who she is, of what she is. And she wants their marriage to be real in every sense of the word, even though he has a mistress that he's perfectly happy to talk to her about and tells her he is not going to abandon. Which makes him a heel. It makes him a cad. That makes him a bad guy. And I don't know, am I just gilding the lily in my own memory? Surely even in the year 2000, that would also have made the man a bad guy. Surely you would not have been rooting for the man in the year 2000 if that were the case. A lot of the stuff in here, that dichotomy, and also a lot of the language, and some of the way the older characters, the elders in either family are portrayed, really struck me as this novel having been written in maybe the early 80s. Or the mid-80s, something like that, which I'm probably insulting Helen Bianca. She's probably not anywhere near that old, but I don't know. I don't know. It could be, like I said, I don't know the provenance of this book, which would probably answer a lot of those questions. I don't know. Sarah might know a little bit more, but even she, I bet, would be nodding her head at saying, yeah, we do need books about this subject. We have exhaustive literary studies of the crap by William Faulkner. He has whole literary societies and journals devoted to him, for Pete's sake. We don't have anything on this at all. Nothing at all. I don't know if Sarah knows whether or not the details of these things. Like, for instance, do the in-house editors from Mills and Boon exercise a heavier hand than the ones that Harlequin presents? The impression I get at Harlequin is that their editorial process is very heavy-handed when it comes to making sure that your book contours to the guidelines of your category, but not very heavy-handed when it comes to anything else that the author wants to do, as is evidenced by the fact that you'll hardly ever see a Harlequin category author that either A, stops being a category author if they maybe get mainstream success, or B, ever has a negative thing to say about the process. They'll go on in interviews in the old Romantic Times magazine. They'll go on in interviews about how, yeah, I have a mainstream career now. I charted on the New York Times bestseller list the last 2 years in a row. But boy, oh boy, I loved my time at Harlequin. Oh my God, let me tell you about my editors there. Let me tell you about all the wonderful friendships that I made there and all the support I had while I was writing books on very unforgiving deadlines. They all say that. So is it possible that Mills and Boon was a little bit harder in that regard? Maybe a little less personal with their authors? And if so, is it possible that there was an older editor at Mills and Boon that sort of aged up this manuscript? Maybe. I mean, there's some racy stuff in here that I think comes from Helen Biancan, but is it possible that a lot of the anachronistic stuff in here was a Mills and Boon thing that was just transported over to Harlequin Possess? I don't know. I don't know. And if I were talking about the provenance of another book from the year 2000, we could all name a couple of books from 1999, 1998, the year 2000, the year 2001, that have received extensive literary study. They didn't sell a tenth as well as this book did, or any of these books did. but nevertheless, we know every jot and tittle about what the editors thought, about what the phone calls were like, about what the primitive emails were like, but not here. So I don't know. I guess I'm curious about that provenance because I'm wanting to excuse this book, which infuriated me as much as it pleased me. I could definitely tell Helen Biancan is, I've read her before in category romances. She's a heck of a storyteller, but this was so frustrating. Why is this even happening, first of all? Why are these families, why do they need a man and woman to marry? Why can't they just do boardroom mergers? There don't seem to be any pressing need on either side, so why not just do that? Why does there need to be a showcase marriage? Except for the society columns, which they didn't hold that kind of sway. That wasn't the kind of sway that they held even 20 years ago. And even if it's necessary, why is it necessary for Aisha to be a child? She's a child compared to Carlo as a character. There's nothing to her, and there's a lot to him. I don't know. That part was frustrating, but I enjoyed it. This is an older category romance. I'm not going to continue doing that. Obviously, for chatting category romance, I'm going to do a lot of new releases. This one came up on the spin of the wheel for last night's reading. Otherwise, it would have been something new. But I'll wrap this up for now. It'll probably be something new next time. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.